Lost plains, ancient brain surgery, levitating stones, history hid its secrets, well tap like before they bury it again. Chapter 1, Ancient South American Golden Airplanes, Quimbaya Artifacts, in the humid cradle of the Colombian jungle, where the Magdalena River carves through dense green and mist hangs. Thick in the air, something extraordinary was unearthed, hidden beneath layers of soil and centuries of history. Small golden objects came to light, strange figurines crafted with a precision that felt almost surgical. At first glance, they resembled the familiar birds, fish, insects, but looked closer and another form emerged. Something with delta wings, upright tail fins, and pointed fuselages. They looked uncannily like modern airplanes. These were the Quimbaya artifacts, dated to roughly 500 to 800 CE. No larger than the palm of a hand, their craftsmanship was stunning. Thin sheets of gold, hammered and molded with expert care, reflected light like liquid fire. Their forms were clean, aerodynamic, seemingly engineered for flight. Wings set low and back on the body stabilizers at vertical angles, no random ornaments or flowing lines typical of mythological depictions. Instead, these objects suggested purpose and intention. The discovery came as part of a broader unearthing of Quimbaya gold, a collection that dazzled archaeologists and treasure hunters alike. Tombs opened carefully or sometimes torn apart in greed yielded not just these strange airplanes, but entire hordes of golden animals, everyday tools and ceremonial items, figurines of bats, frogs, birds, and humans, nose rings, breastplates, and delicate earrings, all speaking to a culture that understood both beauty and technique, who knew how to work with gold long before the Spanish ever set foot in the Americas. The Quimbaya people lived in what is now the modern-day departments of Quindío and Caldas, nestled between the high Andes and thick jungles. Their world was rich in resources. Their civilization flourished, trading with neighboring groups, crafting sophisticated ceramics, and mastering the art of metalwork. Gold to them was not merely a display of wealth. It held deep spiritual meaning, symbolizing the sun power and the divine. Artistry was bound tightly with belief, and their work often bridged the natural and supernatural worlds. The artisans of the Quimbaya used the lost wax casting technique, an advanced method where a model is sculpted in wax, coated in clay, then fired, so the wax melts away, leaving a hollow mold into which molten gold is poured. This was not primitive tinkering. It was refined, deliberate, generations of knowledge hardened into practice. So when these airplane-like figurines surfaced, it raised eyebrows and questions. Were they simply stylized birds, creative expressions of fish darting through river currents, or something more provocative? In the 1970s and 80s, fringe theorists latched onto the mystery writers and researchers proposed that the Quimbaya artifacts were evidence of ancient contact with advanced civilizations, perhaps even extraterrestrials. How, they argued, could a pre-industrial society conceptualize machines that bore such resemblance to modern aerodynamic designs? The controversy deepened in the 1990s when German aeronautical engineers Peter Belting and Konrad Lubis decided to put the artifacts to the test. They scaled up models based on the figurines, adjusting for modern materials but keeping the shapes faithful. In a series of tests, their models flew and flew well, stabilized by fixed wings and upright fins propelled by small engines. The scaled replicas soared through the air. For believers, it was a stunning confirmation. These weren't random designs. They were blueprints, but the academic world was less impressed mainstream. Archaeologists pointed out that many birds and insects in Colombia feature structural characteristics that, when stylized, could easily mimic what we perceive as aerodynamic design. Birds like swifts with swept-back wings and streamlined bodies, insects with flared wings and rigid, elongated forms. Artistic abstraction, they argued, often simplifies and exaggerates natural shapes, especially in cultures where symbolism was as important as realism. Moreover, critics emphasized the danger of presentism, the tendency to interpret ancient artifacts through the lens of modern understanding. To a culture immersed in the natural world, a fish with fins flared in motion or a bird diving through the canopy could inspire shapes that coincidentally align with our ideas of flight. To impose the concept of airplanes onto these works was to overwrite their original meaning with our own. Yet the Quimbaya artifacts resist. Easy dismissal. Their stark geometries, their metallic sheen, their silent echo of something engineered. They linger in the mind, they tease the imagination. It is easy to picture a Quimbaya artisan hammering gold under the dense jungle. Canopy sweat dripping from his brow, shaping a form he had seen only in visions or dreams, or perhaps from something whispered down through generations. Still, the broader collection of Quimbaya artifacts grounds the discussion. Alongside the airplanes sit hundreds of other objects that are undeniably earthly, detailed depictions of native fauna, daily life, ritual practices. They root the culture firmly in its time and place a flourishing society with no evident signs of lost technologies or alien partnerships. The human mind, though, is built to seek patterns to make connections. We see an object with wings and a stabilizer, and we think plane. We forget that wings belong first to birds, that stabilizers might be tails, that the sleek lines we prize in modern design occur naturally in creatures built for speed and survival. In the end, the Quimbaya artifacts occupy a space between wonder and skepticism. They remind us how much we project onto the past, how quickly we fill gaps in knowledge with our own stories. They also remind us that ancient peoples were not primitive caricatures, but intelligent, observant, and deeply creative. When you hold a replica of one of these golden planes in your hand, feel the weight of it. Watch the way it catches the light. It is easy to forget all rational arguments. The artifact feels charged with purpose, with mystery. It hums with a silent, stubborn question. What if, and perhaps that is their greatest power, not improving ancient flight or extraterrestrial visitors, but in igniting the same awe that must have lit the eyes of those who first made them, and connecting us across centuries and continents to a shared human impulse to dream of the skies, to imagine the impossible, and to shape gold into the forms of our deepest hopes and visions. The Quimbaya artifacts remain shimmering and inexplicable in museum cases and private collections nestled among objects of war and worship, beauty and utility. They challenge our assumptions, ask us to question the neat narratives we build around the past. They refuse easy categorization, standing instead as vivid reminders that the world is older, stranger, and more intricate than we often allow ourselves to believe. Chapter 2, Ancient Drills of Egypt. In the fierce glare of the Egyptian sun, among the broken stones and towering monuments of an ancient world, something unexpected catches the eye. On fallen blocks of granite and inside the winding corridors of ruined temples, the marks stand out, spiral grooves etched deep into stone, running with a precision and consistency that seem almost mechanical. Stone cores pulled from drilled holes show the same patterns, clean, even. Spiraling cuts as if spun rapidly under pressure. To modern eyes trained by the clean lines of machine metals and polished engineering, the sight is jarring. How did a civilization of copper chisels and manpower alone leave behind marks that whisper of rotary drills spinning at high speed? The evidence is not subtle. At Giza, near the base of the Great Pyramid, granite blocks bear drill holes with grooves that spiral down into their depths. At Abydos, within the ancient temple of Sudden stone, artifacts display the same signature. Curving uniform tool marks pressed deep into the rock as though cut by rotating machinery in Aswan at the site of the unfinished obelisk, a massive stone that would have been the largest ever erected had it not cracked during carving. The exposed granite shows long, smooth scoops and incisions, again suggesting rotary action. These stones are not soft limestone or crumbly sandstone. They're granite, diorite, basalt. Some of the hardest materials available even today, requiring diamond-tipped tools to cut efficiently. Granite is no friend to tools. Composed largely of quartz and feldspar, it resists abrasion and fractures. Unpredictably under force, modern quarrying uses diamond drills and saws spun at high speeds under water-cooled conditions to prevent the stone from shattering, working granite with copper tools. The metal bending and deforming against the stone's stubborn surface seems almost laughable. And yet in ancient Egypt, thousands of tons of granite were cut, shaped, and moved with apparent ease. The conventional archaeological explanation rests on persistence and ingenuity. Ancient Egyptian craftsmen, it is argued, used copper tube drills and bow drills, employing sand, particularly quartz-rich desert sand, as an abrasive. The idea is simple in principle. The copper tool, while too soft to cut stone, directly could serve as a container for sand particles that did the grinding. Over hours, days, weeks, the sand forced against the granite under pressure and motion would slowly erode the rock. Experiments have shown that under ideal conditions, this method can produce drill holes and even grooves that resemble those found at ancient sites. Simple mechanical advantage using levers, weights, and manpower could explain the deep penetration and even the spiraling grooves if the drill was rotated consistently over time. The bow drill, an ancient tool known to many cultures, could rotate a shaft rapidly by moving a bow back and forth, tightening a cord around the shaft and spinning it with each stroke, but not everyone is satisfied with this explanation. In the late 20th century, engineer Christopher Dunn brought a fresh critical eye to the question. With a background in high precision manufacturing, Dunn was accustomed to examining materials for signs of machining. What he saw in the stone cores and drill holes of Egypt unsettled him. The depth of the grooves, the consistency of the cuts, the implied rate of material removal all suggested to him a speed and efficiency far beyond what hand tools and sand could accomplish. Dunn proposed that some kind of advanced technology, possibly involving ultrasonic drilling or other forms of powered machinery, was at work. In ancient Egypt, Dunn's theories, laid out in his book, The Giza Power Plant, expanded the discussion into broader speculation that the ancient Egyptians might have possessed a level of technological sophistication now lost to history, perhaps even receiving knowledge from an earlier forgotten civilization. The idea captured imaginations, fueling a new wave of alternative archaeology that questioned the mainstream narrative. Skeptics, however, pushed back. Hard archaeologists pointed to experimental archaeology, practical tests in which volunteers used copper drills and sand to bore into granite. While slow and laborious, the method worked. Over hours, comparable marks could be produced. Researchers emphasized that time, patience, and a large labor force were Egypt's real hidden technologies. In a culture where a pharaoh's command mobilized tens of thousands of workers, time-consuming techniques were feasible. Furthermore, not every mark on ancient stone fits the precision suggested by Dunn and others. Many tool marks are rough, irregular, and clearly manual. There is also the problem of evidence. No remnants of advanced machinery have been found, no hardened steel tools, no lost engines buried in the sands, no blueprints or references to technology beyond the reach of copper and stone. Without physical artifacts, claims of lost technology remain tantalizing but unprovable, yet the allure remains. The human mind gravitates to wonder. Confronted with feats that challenge our assumptions about the past, we imagine hidden chapters of history, forgotten geniuses, or interventions from beyond known human achievement. It is a natural impulse and not without merit. Healthy curiosity drives exploration after all, but it also risks us slipping into pseudoscience when speculation hardens into belief without evidence. The fine line between fascination and fantasy is nowhere clearer than in the debate over ancient Egyptian stonework. The very precision that inspires theories of lost technology is in itself a testament to the ancient Egyptians' brilliance. They engineered wonders that have endured millennia. Whether using copper and sand levers and manpower or something still unknown, they shaped the hardest stones on earth with determination and ingenuity. Imagine standing at the unfinished obelisk at a swan. The air quivers with heat. The granite underfoot is rough, unyielding its grain, catching the light in tiny sharp flashes. The obelisk lies prone half, freed from its bedrock cradle, enormous and still somehow delicate. In the shade of a nearby cliff, you run your fingertips along the smooth scooped scars left by ancient hands. The stone feels cold despite the sun. The marks are clean, precise, almost surgical. No humming engines, no glint of lost machines. Only the stubborn, magnificent will of a people who chose to master the impossible inside the temples of Abydos. The silence is heavier. Thick stone walls press the heat inward. Light slants through narrow gaps, catching motes of dust that hang motionless in the air. Here among towering columns and hieroglyphic-covered walls you can find the same spiral grooves, unbroken pillars, the same whisper of forgotten labor. The stillness is almost a presence itself, a reminder that history is not only what was achieved, but what was left behind back at Giza the Colossal. Pyramids cast sharpened shadows across the desert floor between the weathered stones. Modern tourists shuffle and snap photos, most unaware of the microscopic mysteries beneath their feet. The great works of Egypt rise not just from stone and sand, but from an ambition that understood no limits. To gaze on them is to glimpse a mindset different from our own, one where human hands and human dreams could, given enough time, reshape the very bones of the earth. The ancient drills of Egypt, whatever tools made them speak to that ambition, they remind us that the past was not a primitive wasteland waiting for modernity to arrive. It was a world of thinkers, builders, artists, and engineers facing the same universal challenge: how to turn vision into reality with the means at hand. And sometimes the results are so astonishing that even now we can barely believe they were possible. In the end, the mystery is not just in the tools used, but in the minds behind them. Whether by the slow grind of copper and sand, or by techniques we have yet to rediscover, the ancient Egyptians left us puzzles carved in stone, enduring questions waiting patiently beneath the sun. Their legacy is not just the monuments we see, but the enduring human urge to understand, to imagine, and to wonder. Chapter 3: Shoeprint Fossil. Triassic Age. In the barren stretches of Nevada, where singed earth crumbles underfoot and ancient stone breaks and jagged seams, an oddity was found, one that refuses to disappear quietly into the catalogues of geological curiosities. Imprinted in a slab of limestone, amid layers dated to the Triassic period over 200 million years ago, was something startling: a depression that to many eyes resembled the sole of a shoe, not a vague indentation, not a shapeless hollow, but a shape unmistakably familiar. An oblong impression narrowing at one end, broader at the other, with a distinct ridge along the outer edge. Some observers even claimed to see what looked like a seam, as if the stone had captured the mark of stitching along the perimeter, the worn trace of a manufactured object pressed into primordial mud, hardened into history. This Nevada shoeprint, allegedly discovered in the early 20th century, instantly ignited imagination. If the fossil were genuine, its implications were staggering. Human beings, or something like them, would have existed millions of years before the earliest known ancestors appeared, long before dinosaurs reached their prime, long before mammals as we know them had even a foothold. Something would have walked across a muddy surface, leaving behind a print that geology alone preserved. The logic is brutal in its simplicity. You cannot have a human shoe in Triassic stone without rewriting the history of life itself, evolutionary theory, the entire structure of paleontology, human anthropology. All would need to be rebuilt from the ground up. No minor revision, a cataclysm of assumptions undone by a single fossil. But like so many dramatic claims, the details resist easy endorsement. Under closer scrutiny, the shoeprint begins to blur mainstream. Geologists examining photographs, and when possible the actual rock, have pointed out several issues. The supposed seam along the edge appears irregular, not consistent with true stitching. The inner surface of the depression lacks fine detail, no tread marks, no consistent wear patterns. Most damning, the overall shape, while suggestive from certain angles, can be explained by natural processes. Rock is a fluid medium over geological time. Under pressure, layers can crack, fold, shear, and weather into forms that mimic the familiar. Erosion by wind, water, and temperature changes can produce patterns that tease the human eye into seeing footprints, faces, even elaborate structures. It is called pareidolia, our innate tendency to recognize patterns where none were deliberately made. Seen through this lens, the Nevada shoeprint becomes less an artifact and more a curiosity, a combination of natural fracture lines and differential erosion, coincidentally producing a shape that our brains, hungry for meaning, instantly latch onto. It is no different, geologists argue, from seeing a rabbit in the clouds or a face on the surface of Mars. The broader scientific community remains deeply skeptical. Paleontologists emphasize that genuine fossil footprints, whether of dinosaurs, early amphibians, or prehistoric mammals, exhibit distinct pressure ridges, displacement of sediment, and consistent anatomical features. They are part of a known context, appearing alongside other fossil traces that fit the ecosystem and timeline. A lone shoeprint in Triassic rock with no supporting evidence of contemporaneous life forms stands out not as a revelation but as a red flag. Skepticism in science is not cynicism. It is a necessary discipline. Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. Not because scientists fear changing their models, but because those models have been built through rigorous testing, cross-validation, and mountains of consistent data. To overturn them is possible, but the burden of proof lies heavily on the anomaly, not the other way around. Still, anomalies like the Nevada shoeprint persist in the margins, feeding a deeper human hunger. We are fascinated by the idea that history hides more than it reveals, that lost civilizations, ancient visitors, or forgotten epics might be buried just beneath the accepted narratives. It is a compelling story that the familiar timeline, from primitive stone tools to smartphones, is just a sliver of a much grander, stranger saga. Every unexplained artifact, every odd imprint in stone, becomes a crack in the edifice, a whisper from a forgotten. Chapter 3. The Nevada shoeprint is a symbol of that hunger. Whether genuine or a trick of stone and shadow, it captures a moment of cognitive dissonance. A dry, cracked plain under the open sky, the heavy heat pressing down dust in the mouth, and there at your feet, a shape that by all rights should not be there, a footprint in the stone of a world that should have known no such thing. There's power in that moment. The human mind strains against the boundaries of the known, pulls at the fabric of accepted history. Wonder is a fuel, a kunzeya catalyst. It drives question, sparks exploration, but it also requires grounding, a balance between possibility and proof. Even if the Nevada shoeprint is nothing more than the outcome of natural erosion, its impact lingers. It teaches the vital lesson that evidence must be tested, interrogated, not simply embraced because it feels exciting. It reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge demands both imagination and rigor, and perhaps most of all, it shows that the world, even without rewriting human history, is still filled with mysteries, with oddities that tease the senses and provoke questions. The cracked desert stones still hold. Surprises still invite travelers and thinkers to look closer, to wonder, to ask what else might lie undiscovered. Whether carved by ancient unknowns or sculpted by the slow hand of nature, the shoeprint fossil remains an icon of that curiosity, a marker not of misplaced steps, but of the ever-forward drive of the human spirit to find stories hidden in the silence of stone. Chapter 4. The Mechanized Doors of Egyptian Temples. Imagine walking across the sunged courtyard of an ancient Egyptian temple. The air is heavy with heat, the limestone blocks radiating warmth beneath your sandals, incense coils in the air carried by a faint unseen breeze. Before you rises a set of colossal doors, bronze, polished to a gleam set into stone columns that stretch toward the sky. As you approach, the doors shudder, groan softly, and without any visible hand. Swing open, the gathered pilgrims gasp. Some fall to their knees, and the priests draped in linen and gold stand serenely as if commanding the gods themselves. Such scenes are not merely the stuff of romantic imagination. Ancient accounts suggest that the temples of Egypt employed mechanical tricks to amplify their authority. Among these wonders, the idea of mechanized doors stands out, an intersection of engineering and religious spectacle. While hard archaeological evidence is sparse, the concept becomes tangible through later figures like Hero of Alexandria, living in the 1st century CE. Hero wrote detailed descriptions of devices that use steam siphons and air pressure to create automatic movements. He outlined systems where heat from a fire could cause water to vaporize in hidden chambers, building pressure to trigger mechanical action doors, opening statues, moving even. Automatic wine dispensers, Hero's machines, came centuries after the height of Pharaonic Egypt, but they hint that the knowledge, or at least the seeds of it, might have deeper roots. Simple steam-driven systems are not. Beyond the reach of earlier Egyptian artisans heating water in concealed vessels, channeling expanding vapor into tubes that push against levers or counterweights. Such techniques require ingenuity but not impossible materials: a copper sphere, a few iron rods, and a careful understanding of heat could achieve what seemed to the uninitiated like divine magic. Descriptions from classical sources, including Greek historians who visited Egypt, tell of temples where doors moved by themselves or where statues spoke and breathed. Whether these writers witnessed working mechanisms or repeated exaggerated tales remains uncertain. Still, the convergence of accounts points to a consistent cultural practice blending engineering with religious theater. The religious context cannot be overstated for the average Egyptian. The temple was not a public building, it was the literal house of the gods. Only priests could enter its deepest chambers. Every ceremony was layered with symbolism, secrecy, and awe. If the high priest could cause massive bronze doors to open with a whispered incantation, the illusion reinforced that the idea that he spoke for powers beyond mortal comprehension. Temples were constructed with precision walls, aligned with celestial bodies, hidden chambers, concealed passageways, and acoustic tricks amplified voices or carried sounds through solid stone mechanisms. If they existed, would have been an extension of this mastery of space and sensory manipulation. It wasn't science versus magic. It was all one continuum, with engineering serving theology. Mainstream historians acknowledge that Hero's designs are real and brilliant, but they caution against projecting his inventions onto Pharaonic Egypt without direct evidence. No remains of steam-powered mechanisms have been unearthed from the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, or even the New Kingdom. What we have are ruins, monumental, magnificent, but silent on the inner workings that might have animated them. Alternative theorists propose a lost tradition of technological sophistication, arguing that the Egyptians understood hydraulics, pneumatics, and pressure long before such knowledge was formally recorded. They point to the scale of Egypt's construction, projects the precision of its stonework and the intricacies of its religious machinery as hints that a deeper scientific layer once existed beneath the surface of ritual. Skeptics counter with caution: illusions, after all, do not always require a complex machinery. Doors might have been swung by hidden pulleys and counterweights. Fires could create draft currents that moved lightweight statues or banners. What feels miraculous in a temple dimly lit by oil lamps and thick with incense might have been achieved through simple means executed masterfully, but whether steam, sand, or subtle hands pull the levers, the result was the same. Or imagine the effect on a common pilgrim traveling weeks through a desert and floodplain to reach the sacred precinct. The temple looms ahead, whitewashed walls gleaming under the pitiless sun. A high priest adorned with the regalia of divinity raises a hand. Without visible effort, doors 2 stories high swing inward. The noise echoes like thunder across the stone floor within the darkness parts to reveal a gold-shrouded sanctuary flickering with torches and thick with the smell of burning mirror. The experience was total sight, sound, smell, touch, all orchestrated to pull the visitor out of the mundane world and into a space where gods walked. Understanding this interplay between engineering and emotion is critical. Ancient science was not science in the modern sense, detached and analytical. It was bound up with the sacred, the performative, the communal. Knowledge was guarded, shared only within priestly castes, and directed toward reinforcing the social and cosmic order. Thus, whether or not the ancient Egyptians had true mechanized doors powered by steam pressure remains an open question. What is certain is that they understood human psychology intimately. They knew how to construct spaces that made the body feel small, the spirit feel lifted, and the mind believing miracles. There's a reason why, even in ruins, the temples of Egypt still command silence. Stand in the hyper-style hall at Karak, the forest of stone columns rising like a petrified woodland. The heat presses down, but the shade is cool and ancient. The stones seem to hum with memory. You can almost hear the echo of doors swinging open, the whispered prayers of thousands carried into the vaults of sky and stone. The marvels of ancient Egypt were not built to merely impress. They were built to transform, to turn the dust of the earth into a stage for the eternal. Whether by hand, by hidden counterweight, or by the pressure of steam and fire, the great doors of the temples served the same ultimate purpose: to make human beings believe for one breathless moment that they had stepped beyond the bounds of the ordinary world and into the heart of the divine. Chapter 5, Ancient Egyptian Knowledge of Electricity. Debated theories inside the tombs of ancient Egypt. The darkness is almost alive. Step past the threshold and the air thickens. Cool and heavy, the limestone walls drink the scant light from outside, leaving only the faintest illumination. Yet across these walls stretch intricate murals, vivid, colorful, detailed scenes, etched and painted with remarkable precision. Deep inside, pyramids and burial chambers far from the reach of natural light. The question rises, how did the ancient Egyptians illuminate these spaces to carry out such painstaking work? Some theorists have offered a curious image: a lotus flower at the base, a bulbous shape above it with what appears to be a coiled serpent emerging from within. To some, this depiction looks suspiciously like a modern light bulb, complete with socket filament and even a high-voltage cable stretching toward a small box or pedestal. Alternative historians seized on the image. If the ancient Egyptians possessed electric lighting, they argue it would solve the mystery of how artists worked in the pitch-black depths of tombs without leaving soot marks from torches or oil lamps. It would imply a level of technological sophistication centuries ahead of its time, knowledge somehow lost or hidden from the historical record, but the mainstream view offers a different, more grounded explanation. Egyptologists interpret the Dender bas-relief as a symbolic scene from Egyptian mythology. The lotus represents creation, a frequent theme in Egyptian thought where the world emerges from a primordial ocean. The serpent rising from the flower is a representation of Humtus, a deity associated with rebirth and fertility. The entire image is mythological, not mechanical. The bulb shape is the womb of the lotus flower. The cable is a stylized depiction of the vine or stem connecting the flower to the earth. No wires, no sockets, no power sources. The engineering problem remains, though. If not electricity, how did they light these spaces without leaving obvious traces of combustion? One theory points to the use of mirrors. Brightly polished copper or bronze mirrors could reflect sunlight deep into corridors by positioning a series of mirrors at strategic angles. Some experiments suggest this method could carry natural light tens of meters into a structure, though not without loss of intensity. Another explanation is simpler oil lamps. Egyptians had access to high-quality vettal oils and wicks. In well-ventilated spaces, carefully trimmed lamps produce little soot. Evidence of lamp usage has been found in some tombs, including holders and soot traces in less ventilated areas. It's possible that artisans simply managed the smoke, carefully working with small steady flames rather than blazing. Torches. Speculative theories, however, continue to pull attention. The so-called Baghdad batteries, clay jars containing copper cylinders and iron rods discovered in Mesopotamia date to around 200 BCE. Some experiments suggest these could generate a small electric charge if filled with an acidic solution. The idea still debated is that ancient peoples may have stumbled onto basic electrochemical reactions if Mesopotamians had primitive batteries. Could Egyptians have developed similar devices? Could the Dendera reliefs be literal rather than symbolic? Skeptics point to a decisive gap. No evidence of electrical infrastructure has ever been found in Egypt. No wires embedded in walls, no corroded sockets, no clear remnants of batteries, generators, or any components necessary for electrical systems. The complete absence of such artifacts, they argue, makes the theory untenable. Human beings are pattern seekers faced with a culture as advanced as ancient Egypt, capable of aligning monuments with the stars, moving stones weighing hundreds of tons, and embalming bodies with a knowledge of chemistry. It is tempting to project modern capabilities onto them. We want to believe there is more, that hidden among the sand and stone are secrets that could reframe everything we know. This urge reflects a broader human fascination, the desire to bridge the past and the present. The mystery of the Dendera light is not just about electricity. It is about our hope that the ancient world was not separate from us, but closer, more familiar, more astonishing. It is an emotional connection as much as an intellectual one, yet reality too deserves wonder, even without electric bulbs or hidden batteries. The accomplishments of ancient Egypt are staggering. Their architects, artists, and engineers mastered tools and techniques with precision and purpose, leaving behind works that still command awe thousands of years later. Picture the artisans crouched in a tomb chamber, the sharp scent of oil lamps mixing with the cool dust of the limestone walls. Their brushes move steadily, laying down pigments that will outlast empires. The light flickers, casting long shadows across the carvings. No hum of electricity, no glow of filaments. Only the steady, enduring work of human hands. Guided by vision and ritual, the Dendera light, whatever it truly represents, continues to ignite our imagination. It invites us to question, to explore, to imagine the possibilities, whether symbol or secret technology. It is a reminder that the past is never fully settled. It stretches before us, a landscape rich with unanswered questions, waiting for the next step, the next look, the next leap of curiosity. Chapter 6. The Hidden Chambers of the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid of Giza rises from the desert like a frozen mountain of stone, its battered summit catching the hard Egyptian sun. For over 4,500 years, it has loomed against the skyline, a monolith of precision and ambition. Its massive stones, stacked with impossible accuracy, have whispered of hidden secrets to generations of visitors and scholars. In 2017, that whisper grew louder. Using a technique called muon tomography, scientists with the Scan Pyramids project peered inside the ancient structure without touching a single block. Muons, subatomic particles generated by cosmic rays, pass harmlessly through matter, but at different rates depending on density. By placing sensitive detectors around and inside the pyramid, researchers tracked these particles, mapping voids and solids with astonishing clarity. What they found stunned the world. Above the grand gallery running parallel to it, they detected a hidden space, a void at least 30 meters long, roughly the size of an airplane fuselage. It sat high in the heart of the pyramid, untouched and unseen for millennia. No one knows its purpose. No passages reach it. No inscriptions hint at its existence. Just a quiet, empty span of darkness suspended inside one of humanity's oldest and most enigmatic creations. The discovery did not come From treasure hunters or bold adventurers with chisels and ropes, it came from the patient work of an international team. French, Japanese, Egyptian, and Canadian scientists pooling technology and expertise scanned pyramids represented a new kind of exploration, non-invasive, respectful, rigorous, in the hushed corridors of the great. Pyramid instruments hummed quietly, recording the ghost-like traces of cosmic rain. The idea of hidden chambers inside the pyramid is not new. Ancient legends spoke of secret rooms holding lost kings, vast treasures, or sacred texts. Throughout history, explorers have chipped, blasted, and tunneled in search of these fabled spaces. Napoleon's men scoured the passages, Victorian adventurers crawled through dust-clogged shafts, yet no hidden room had ever been confirmed until the Mewans told a different story. Mainstream archaeology offers a cautious interpretation. The void, some suggest, might be a relieving space designed to lighten the pressure bearing down on the grand gallery below. The pyramid's builders understood load distribution well enough to construct corbelled ceilings and layered chambers. Above key points, the hidden void could be nothing more than a clever architectural trick concealed because it was never meant to be seen. Yet the speculation doesn't end there. Alternative theories abound. Some imagine the void as a lost sanctuary, perhaps intended to house sacred relics tied to the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. Others suggest it could be part of a symbolic architecture reflecting ancient Egyptian cosmology, a spiritual cavity within the stone body of the pyramid, mirroring the void between stars in the night sky. The context adds weight to the mystery. The Great Pyramid was built with a precision that defies easy explanation. Its base is level to within a fraction of an inch. Its sides once gleaming with polished limestone casing. Stones aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points. The builders managed not only to lift stones weighing dozens of tons, but to place them so accurately that even today a knife blade cannot easily slip between. Some of them, the pyramid's construction techniques, planning, and symbolic meaning, have long fueled human fascination. Some have proposed that hidden chambers could contain lost knowledge, the original plans of the builders, the Hall of Records mentioned in myth, a final testament left by an otherwise silent civilization. But for now, evidence remains elusive. Muon tomography can reveal empty spaces, but it cannot say what's inside them. To reach the newly discovered void without damaging the pyramid poses a daunting challenge. Drilling small access points, sending in micro-robots or fiber optic cameras. These ideas are under discussion, but Egypt's antiquities authorities proceed carefully. No one wants to risk the integrity of the world's most iconic monument. For Egyptologists, the excitement is real, but measured. The void could reshape our understanding of how the pyramid was built, why it was designed the way it was, and what its full purpose might have been. Yet they know that every answer tends to breed more questions. New discoveries illuminate the past, but they also complicate it, adding layers to an already intricate story. Standing at the base of the Great Pyramid today, you feel its scale pressing down on you. Each stone is the size of a man. The sides rise at an angle that draws the eye upward toward a sky as fierce and empty as it was in Khufu's time. Around you, tourists chatter and cameras click, but step into one of the narrow corridors and the noise falls away. Walls close in, the stone brace coolness, light dims. In that tight sloping passage, the weight of millions of tons of stone presses all around, silent and eternal. It is in this hush that the hidden chambers wait. Scientists listen to the pyramid, now not with chisels or torches, but with particles from the stars. They track cosmic rays as they whisper through stone, mapping the invisible. They reveal that the pyramid is not a solid mass, but a labyrinth of known and unknown spaces, each one a portal to questions older than history itself. The Great Pyramid continues to guard its secrets tightly. For every layer we uncover, there is another deeper still. For every discovery, a void, a shaft, a forgotten inscription, the monument reminds us how much we still do not know. And that perhaps is its greatest power, not just in what it reveals, but and what it withholds in the way it stands. Timeless against the desert sky, promising that wonder is not a thing of the past. That even in an age of satellites and supercomputers, the oldest questions remain the most profound. What lies inside? Who built it truly? Why in the shadow of the Great Pyramid, the journey of discovery is far from over. It is only just beginning. Chapter 7, The Greenland Viking Maps. In a dim room heavy with the smell of old parchment and oil lamps, a map spreads open across a wooden table. Its lines are shaky but deliberate, its coastline strange yet familiar. One outline in particular catches the eye, a rugged landmass that looks suspiciously like Greenland. The problem is the map claims a time long before European explorers officially charted the far northern Atlantic. This is the puzzle of the Greenland Viking maps. Among these is the Vinland map, a document that burst into public view in the 1960s, shaking assumptions about medieval exploration. Purportedly drawn in the 15th century, it shows parts of the North Atlantic, including Greenland, in forms that hint at more detailed knowledge than expected. If authentic, it would suggest that Norse explorers had not only reached Greenland, but had mapped it with a surprising degree of accuracy centuries before the age of European expansion. The historical backdrop is critical. Norse settlers led by Eric the Red reached Greenland around 985 CE. They established colonies along the island's southwestern coast, farming, hunting, and trading. These communities endured for centuries, adapting to the brutal cold and the fickle generosity of the North Atlantic environment. Stories of Greenland and of lands even farther west trickled back to Europe through sagas and oral traditions. Given that, it is not surprising to imagine that some knowledge of Greenland's rugged coastline could have filtered back to medieval mapmakers. What raises eyebrows is the level of detail suggested in some maps: fjords, bulging coastlines. The general ruggedness of Greenland's shape, features not easily guessed by those who had never sailed those icy waters. The Vinland map became a flash point for these discussions. Housed at Yale University, it was first revealed in 1965 amid great fanfare. If genuine, it would push back the timeline of European knowledge of North America and its surrounding geography by centuries. The map depicted not only Greenland, but also a land labeled Vinland west of Greenland, echoing North Saras that spoke of new lands across the sea. But controversy clung to the Vinland map from the beginning. Experts scrutinized the ink, finding inconsistencies. Chemical analyses detected the presence of anitis, a form of titanium dioxide not typically found in medieval inks, but common in modern products. Questions arose about the parchment itself, about whether an old blank sheet had been repurposed by a forger. Despite repeated tests and studies, the debate never fully settled. Some researchers argue that contamination during handling might explain the annotates. Others maintain the evidence points clearly to a modern forgery. The ink composition, they insist, does not match known medieval recipes. Beyond the Vinland map, other signs point to Norse exploration beyond Greenland. At Lonzo Meadows in Newfoundland, archaeologists uncovered an unmistakable Norse settlement, proving that Viking explorers reached North American shores around the year 1000 CE. Buildings, ironwork, and artifacts tell monolith of ignorance. Information traveled slowly, but it traveled by sailors, by traders, by whispered legend. Yet caution is necessary. Medieval maps were often strange hybrids of fact and fantasy. Dragon sea monsters and mythological islands crowded their margins. Artists took liberties, filled in unknown areas with guesses, and sometimes copied older works without understanding them. Accuracy could easily be the result of coincidence or creative interpretation. The idea that Viking knowledge found its way onto maps centuries later is intoxicating, but it must be balanced against the messy realities of medieval crafty. Partial truths and half-remembered stories wove themselves into maps just as surely as firth and knowledge. Still, the fascination persists. in the creak of a long ship riding gray waves in the freezing sting of the North Atlantic. Wind in the weathered hands of a Norse sailor scanning an uncharted horizon, we sense a spirit that modern history often overlooks. The Norse were not just raiders and warriors. They were explorers, risk-takers, people who pushed beyond the known world into the unknown, because they could, because they must. Whether or not the Greenland Viking maps offer perfect, unbroken evidence, they remind us of a profound truth. The history of human exploration is older, wider, and deeper than tidy timelines suggest. Picture a medieval scribe huddled over rough parchment in a cold, drafty room. He scratches out coastlines under the flickering light of a tallow candle, guided not by direct experience, but by fragments, a sailor's drunken boast, a traveler's cryptic tale, a whisper from a merchant who knew a man who'd seen the edge of the world. He shapes these hints into lines and names, giving form to places he can scarcely imagine. Thus history is built one uncertain line at a time. Greenland's rugged shores, whether drawn from first-hand Viking knowledge or later imagination, loom large in that story. They represent the eternal human drive to map the unmapped, to know the unknown. They remind us that long before compasses and sextants, before satellite images and GPS, there were brave souls who pushed fragile ships into frigid waters seeking something more. And whether inked in genuine medieval hands or forged in the ambitions of a later era, the Greenland Viking maps keep that spirit alive, daring us to look backward and forward with wonder. Chapter 8, Siberian Valley of Death. In the endless frozen expanse of Siberia, there is a place so remote, so brutally isolated that few outsiders have ever set foot there, deep within the Yakutia region, where the permafrost locks the earth in a permanent grip, and thick forests stretch for hundreds of miles without interruption. Whispers tell of the Valley of Death, a swampy, treacherous lowland set to hide strange metallic structures half buried in the tundra. According to local stories, these are not natural formations shaped like shallow domes or hemispheres. The structures reportedly rise just above the ground, their surfaces unnaturally smooth sometimes, described as resonating with a low metallic hum when touched. Some claim these objects are large enough to crawl. Inside, though, the experience is said to bring discomfort or illness, headaches, strange fevers, or worse. The structures seem inert, lifeless, yet somehow watchful, as if remnants of a technology beyond human memory. But the terrain itself resists easy exploration. The valley lies hidden under layers of swampy moss, bog water, and towering pine, and summer clouds of mosquitoes and biting flies swarm thick enough to choke. In winter, the temperatures plummet so far that the air itself feels brittle. Crossing these forests means braving quicksand-like bogs, unstable ground, and a silence so deep it presses against the ears. Verification of the strange tales has been almost impossible. Yet the legends persist, passed down through generations of indigenous Ini and Yakut people. They speak of iron houses that should not be approached, places where the earth feels wrong beneath the feet. Some stories tell of travelers who lingered near the domes too long and never returned. Others reference deadly rains of fire from the sky, flattening forests, and boiling rivers. The last detail draws inevitable comparisons to real recorded events. The Tunguska explosion of 1908, a blast so powerful it leveled 2,000 square km of forest, likely caused by an asteroid or comet fragment exploding in the atmosphere. Yet Tunguska was not unique. Throughout Siberia's history, there have been scattered reports of similar, though smaller events: massive blasts, unexplained fires, trees flattened in radial patterns with no impact crater. Some theorists speculate that the metallic structures in the Valley of Death could be connected. Perhaps they are remnants of an ancient defense system designed to protect the Earth from celestial threats, lost technology from a forgotten civilization buried under millennia of ice and soil. Others suggest the structures could be fragments of past impacts, themselves alien. Debris fallen satellites from unknown epochs, scientific skepticism. Remains firm, expeditions have been rare, poorly funded, and hampered by the brutal conditions. Some accounts describe finding peculiar metallic formations, but no samples have ever been conclusively analyzed or authenticated. The few scientific teams that ventured into Yakutia returned with stories of swamps and mosquitoes, but little else. Geological studies suggest that permafrost and ancient volcanic activity could account for strange mineral formations, hollowed-out domes of rock, created by natural processes, and yet the mystery endures. Remote places have always bred legends, the further beyond the frontier a place lies, the easier it becomes for mystery to take root. Without easy access or clear evidence, the mind fills the gaps with possibilities, ancient machines. Hidden cities, forgotten guardians of Earth, the Valley of Death sits just beyond the reach of certainty, keeping its secrets tucked safely within the folds of an unforgiving wilderness. Picture it, the oppressive chill of a Siberian night pressing in from all sides. Frost creeping across the mossy ground, a dense wall of trees stretching in every direction, muffling sound into a heavy silence. Somewhere beneath the surface, the faint metallic ringing of something buried, something not shaped by the chaotic hand of nature. No lights, no paths, only the crack of frozen branches underfoot and the unseen presence of something waiting, unseen and unknowable. Whether the valley's metallic structures are ancient technology, geological quirks, or simply the fertile soil of human imagination, their power remains undeniable. They speak to something deep in the human mind, the urge to believe that the world still holds mysteries beyond our understanding, that somewhere out there hidden under ice and time lie wonders we have not yet uncovered. The Valley of Death is a mirror reflecting our hopes and fears about what remains unknown. It reminds us that even in the age of satellites and instant information, vast swaths of Earth remain wild, unexplored, whispering possibilities just beyond the edges of certainty. Real or imagined, the stories from the valley are a testament to mystery itself. Its endurance, its traction, its power to shape how we see the world and ourselves. Chapter 9. The Hypogeum of Ħal-Saflieni. Beneath the unassuming streets of Pamalta, hidden from view by layers of earth and time, lies one of the oldest and most enigmatic structures on Earth. The Hypogeum of Ħal-Saflieni is a sprawling prehistoric underground complex carved entirely from solid rock over 5,000 years ago. It is a temple, a tomb of mystery, a world meticulously shaped by hands that left behind no written record of their intentions. The Hypogeum unfolds in layers, a labyrinth of chambers, corridors, and sanctuaries that stretch 3 stories deep into the ground. Each space is hewed with astonishing precision. Rounded walls curve in perfect symmetry. Stone columns rise from the bedrock as though grown, not carved. Niches and altars appear at calculated intervals. The deeper you descend, the heavier the silence grows, a stillness broken only by the soft tread of your own footsteps, which echoes strangely against the ancient stone. One chamber in particular has drawn intense fascination, the so-called Oracle Room, small and seemingly simple at first glance. Its power is hidden not in its shape, but in its sound. A man speaking, or better yet chanting within the Oracle Room at specific low frequencies triggers an astonishing phenomenon. The entire structure begins to resonate. Vibrations roll through the walls, through the floor, through the body itself, until it feels as if the stone and the flesh have become part of the same living entity. Visitors have reported uncanny sensations, the hairs rising on the back of the neck, a low hum filling the chest, a drifting sense of time and space. In the resonant frequencies of the Oracle Room, the human mind seems to loosen its grip on ordinary perception. The air itself appears to thicken, sound bends around the body. Some speak of visions of moments of deep clarity or disorientation. Scientific studies have confirmed that these experiences are not mere imagination. Acoustic researchers found that the Hypogeum's resonances cluster around 110 Hz, a frequency that affects the human brain, particularly the temporal lobes responsible for processing sound, emotion, and memory. Exposure to such frequencies can lead to heightened awareness, mild trance states, and vivid emotional reactions. The Hypogeum, it seems, is not just a structure. It is an instrument tuned with care and precision. Theories about its original purpose. Multiply, many scholars believe the Hypogeum served religious or ceremonial functions. The acoustic properties could have been used intentionally to amplify the gravity of rituals, to induce altered states among participants, to simulate communion with the divine. The combination of darkness, enclosed space, and powerful sound would have created an overwhelming sensory experience, one that collapsed the boundaries between the mundane and the sacred. How the ancient builders achieved this? Without written plans, without modern measuring devices, remains an open question. Some suggest that through trial, error, and generations of accumulated intuition, Neolithic people developed an empirical mastery of sound. Others speculate that forgotten knowledge of acoustic physics, a precautions lost in time, guided their chisels. More speculative theories imagine a deeper purpose, that the Hypogeum was not just a temple or tomb, but a place where sound was wielded as a tool, perhaps even as a form of healing, initiation, or communication beyond the ordinary senses. Echoes of these ideas ripple through traditions worldwide, where drumming, chanting, and resonance have long been linked to altered consciousness. Mainstream archaeology, however, remains grounded. It points to the Hypogeum as a triumph of Neolithic engineering and spirituality, a reflection of a society capable of great sophistication without invoking lost technology. In a world before metal tools, before writing, before cities, a people shaped living rock into a space that still speaks, not with words, but with vibration, resonance, presence. Stepping into the Hypogeum is stepping out of time. The air grows cool and damp. The walls seem to close gently inward. A whispered word bounces strangely from unseen corners. A low chant, even accidental, can set the stone to vibrating, sending shivers along the skin. In that moment, it is easy to believe the structure is breathing, listening, remembering. The Hypogeum of Ħal-Saflieni remains a living monument to the ancient human urge to shape the environment, not just with hands, but with spirit, whether through forgotten techniques or intuitive genius. The builders created more than chambers and corridors. They created an experience, a portal to a state of being where sound and stone merge, and where the past murmurs in frequencies just beyond the edge of ordinary hearing. Chapter 10, Ancient Greek Fire. In the chaos of battle, few things inspire panic faster than the sight of an enemy's secret weapon. For the Byzantine Empire, that weapon was Greek fire, a terror born of human ingenuity, designed not only to destroy but to unnerve. Roaring, hissing force that defied water itself, Greek fire first emerged in the 7th century, at a time when Constantinople stood as the last great bulwark of Roman civilization against a tide of invasions. Most famously, it was used in naval warfare, defending the city against sieges from Arab fleets intent on capturing the Byzantine capital. Eyewitnesses describe a horror fire leaping from Byzantine ships across the waves, engulfing enemy vessels, clinging to their hulls, and burning with such ferocity that attempts to extinguish it only fed the flames. Unlike ordinary fire, Greek fire did not merely blaze, it attacked thick and sticky. It latched onto surfaces like a living thing. Sailors, desperate to save their ships, would find that throwing water onto the fire only worsened the inferno. Flames would slide down rigging, pull on decks, and creep up, spreading chaos in moments. Delivery of Greek fire was as ingenious as the substance itself. Byzantine engineers mounted siphon-like devices on the prows of their warships. These tubes, reinforced and pressurized, could project jets of fire across short distances, a primitive flamethrower that turned the ocean into a battlefield of smoke and terror. Some accounts also describe portable versions, ceramic grenades filled with incendiary liquid hurled by hand and shattering on impact to release their infernal cargo. Yet for all its devastating effect, the exact composition of Greek fire remains unknown. Historians and chemists have speculated for centuries. Theories abound: petroleum distillates, naphtha quicklime, sulfur resin, and other volatile compounds in secret combinations. Some suggest the fire was ignited on contact with air. Others believe it required a separate ignition source. Medieval chroniclers AD'd and mystified left tantalizing hints, but no definitive recipe. The secrecy surrounding Greek fire was absolute. The Byzantines treated it as the state secret of the highest order, known only to a select few artisans. Constantinople finally fell centuries later. The secret fell with it. The psychological impact of Greek fire cannot be overstated. It was not simply a tool of destruction, but of demoralization. Facing an enemy who could seemingly conjure fire from the sea itself shattered the morale of attacking forces. Ships broke formation, men abandoned their posts. Commanders surrendered rather than face the horror of the unquenchable flames. Entire fleets, it is said, were reduced to smoldering wreckage within hours. Modern science has tried to reconstruct Greek fire, but with limited success. Experiments with different chemical mixtures have produced substances that mimic some reported behaviors: flames that float and spread on water, sticky combustibles, but no one formula has matched all the descriptions. Part of the challenge lies in the limited and sometimes contradictory historical accounts. Another part is the simple truth that the Byzantines understood something about chemistry, delivery mechanisms, and weaponization that they never passed down. Greek fire stands today as an emblem of lost technology. It reminds us that human beings, even without the tools and theories of modern science, could create marvels, and that those marvels could vanish without a trace if their guardians willed it. So imagine the scene: the black hulls of Byzantine ships cutting through the dark water, the metallic clank of armor, and the shouted commands of sailors in the distance. Enemy vessels crowd the sea. A sudden roar breaks the night. A jet of flame arcs outward, trailing sparks, and strikes the lead ship. Flames blossom, turning timbers to torchwood. In seconds, men scream, some leaping into the water, only to find the fire floating toward them, relentless, unstoppable. The air stinks of burning resin and charred flesh. Panic shreds discipline. The line breaks, the siege fails, and in the heart of Constantinople, behind towering walls, the defenders prepare the siphons once more. Greek fire is a study in contrast. Simple yet sophisticated, terrifying yet elegant, a product of necessity and brilliance. It embodies the paradox of ancient warfare, the constant race between the creation of devastating new technologies and the desperate scramble to understand or survive them. The weapon also offers a quiet warning: knowledge once lost is not easily regained. What was once wielded with confidence can in a few generations become a riddle wrapped in rumor. Greek fire remains in a very real sense alive, not in the arsenals of modern navies, but in the imagination. It burns at the edge of memory, a reminder of what brilliance can achieve, and what it can lose when history turns its gaze elsewhere and secrets slip into the smoke. Chapter 11. Prehistoric brain surgery, Trepanation in the flickering light of a fire. Somewhere in the distant shadow of human history, a sharp stone scrapes bone, the patient conscious, or perhaps in a stupor from pain shock or crude herbal sedatives, lies still while a healer methodically carves a hole into the living skull. Blood pools, but the work continues. This is Trepanation, the oldest known form of surgical intervention, a testament to the raw courage, ingenuity, and desperation of early humanity. Archaeologists have uncovered the evidence across the globe: ancient skulls from Europe, Africa, the Americas, and Asia. They are unmistakable signs of deliberate, careful openings. Some holes are round, others square or oval, but all show marks that distinguish them from injuries caused by violence or accidents. The edges are smooth, the bone around the holes thickened and healed, proof that the patients often survived not just the procedure, but lived for years afterward. These skulls, some over 7,000 years old, reveal a sophistication few would expect from so-called primitive societies. In France, mass graves from the Neolithic period yielded skulls with neat-heeled trepations. In Peru, pre-Columbian civilizations performed the surgery with such success that some regions show survival rates as high as 80%, from Mongolia to North Africa, from the high Andes to the damp plains of prehistoric Britain. The same story emerges. Humanity was cutting into its own skulls and living to tell about it. Why they did it remains a subject of debate. Some cases likely arose from medical necessity. Head injuries, especially fractures causing pressure inside the skull, could have driven healers to relieve the crushing force before death. Ensued other cases hint at more spiritual motives and attempt to release malevolent spirits, to cure seizures or madness, or to perform rituals of rebirth and purification. The methods varied, but shared an underlying precision scraping techniques. Slowly wearing through the bone with abrasive tools were common. In some cultures, cutting with flint knives, bronze blades, or early iron instruments created clean, deliberate openings, sometimes drill-like tools rotated by hand or with primitive bow mechanisms bored into the skull. Every method was brutal by today's standards, but shockingly effective. Without antibiotics, without sterile rooms, without anesthetics, beyond perhaps alcohol or herbal concoctions, they succeeded where modern surgery would seem impossible. The survival evidence is crucial. The bone shows signs of healing, smooth regrowth, rounded edges proving that patients did not simply die on the operating slab. They endured, recovered, and carried the marks of their ordeal with them for years. Some skulls show multiple trepations, suggesting that individuals survived one operation only to undergo another later in life. Trepation was not isolated to a single culture or time. In Neolithic Europe, sites like Ensheim in France and Roquefort in Switzerland produced dozens of trap skulls. In ancient Peru, the Inca and their predecessors performed trepations with extraordinary frequency and skill, sometimes using refined surgical tools. In the Middle East, evidence from early Mesopotamian sites points to similar practices. The widespread nature of the phenomenon suggests a deep cross-cultural understanding, a recognition that the skull could be opened, that it could heal, and that doing so could sometimes save a life. Mainstream archaeology views trepation as a mix of practical medicine and spiritual belief. Far from random acts of superstition, the surgeries display careful planning, anatomical knowledge, and a surprising grasp of the body's resilience. Healers must have known how to avoid critical blood vessels, how to manage bleeding, how to recognize the limits of bone and brain. Speculative theories push further. Some researchers suggest that prehistoric healers might have observed patterns, had trauma leading to unconsciousness, madness, or death, and learned through grim trial and error how to intervene. In a world without written records, knowledge passed through generations by hands-on experience, word of mouth, and ritual. Tradition, the emotional dimension, cannot be ignored. Imagine the desperate choices faced by early communities. A child with a crushed skull from a fall, a warrior staggering after a blow to the head, a shaman writhing with seizures interpreted as spiritual possession. In such moments, healers reached for their crude tools, not with certainty, but with hope. The hope that cutting into the sacred vault of the skull could bring relief rather than death. Picture the scene, the harsh scrape of stone against bone, rhythmic and relentless, the heavy scent of blood and earth mingling in the cramped violet space. The low murmur of chanting prayers or instructions barked in urgency, a tense moment suspended between life and death as the final sliver of bone gives way and the hidden world of the brain lies exposed. Trepation speaks across millennia of human bravery, both on the part of those who wielded the tools and those who lay helpless under them. It reminds us that medicine did not begin with white coats and sterile theaters. It began with grit with risk, with the fierce refusal to surrender to injury or illness without a fight. Even in the distant, unwritten past, humans were not passive before suffering. They carved into the mystery of their own flesh, seeking healing, seeking understanding. Trepanation stands as a scarred but shining testament to the will to live, the will to heal, and the enduring belief that even the most frightening frontiers, the mind, the skull, the unknown, could be confronted with courage. Chapter 12, the Anunnaki Technology Sumerian Myths. In the heat of ancient Mesopotamia, where the rivers Tigris and Euphrates carved lifelines through endless sand civilizations, rose under the gaze of gods. Among these gods were the Anunnaki beings whose presence defined the very structure of the world. To the Sumerians, Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians, the Anunnaki were not distant abstract deities. They were active shapers of reality, creators of humanity, givers of law, and wielders of powers that seemed to bridge the gap between magic and machinery. The Anunnaki lived at the top of the divine hierarchy. According to myth, they descended from An, the sky god, and Ki, the earth goddess. They were said to have assigned duties to the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. Humanity itself, according to some accounts, was fashioned from clay to serve these gods, laboring in the cities and fields while the Anunnaki ruled from their shining temples. Scattered through the myths are tantalizing descriptions of their technology, the me tablets. For example, are artifacts of astonishing power, said to have been gifted to humanity by the gods. These tablets controlled aspects of civilization, writing, kingship, metallurgy, agriculture, even truth and deceit, the me. Were not mere ideas. They were described as physical objects containing within them the divine blueprints of human society. The Anunnaki were also said to possess flying boats, vehicles that carried them from their heavenly abyss to the earth below. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the hero encounters beings traveling between realms in ways that seem to defy natural law. Other stories speak of weapons that could level cities, garments that shone with authority, and crowns that seem to bestow divine power to modernize. These accounts bear a strange familiarity. Machines that control knowledge, vehicles that pierce the skies, weapons of unimaginable force. It is no wonder that some theorists have suggested these myths might preserve faint memories of real technology, either from a lost human civilization or from beings beyond the earth. This idea was most famously popularized by Eric von Däniken, who in the late 20th century proposed that many ancient myths around the world could be reinterpreted as records of extraterrestrial visitations. In this view, the Anunnaki were not gods, but visitors from another world mistaken by early humans for deities because of their advanced technology and superior power. Fondon's theories captured the public imagination, opening the floodgates for a wave of ancient astronaut speculation. Books, documentaries, and endless debates followed, weaving the Anunnaki into a narrative of forgotten contact and hidden origins mainstream. Scholarship, however, offers a different interpretation. Historians and archaeologists emphasize that mythological descriptions of divine artifacts and powers are deeply symbolic. The me tablets in this view are metaphors for the organizing principles of society, a way to express the belief that laws, crafts, and institutions came from the gods. The flying boats and destructive weapons represent the natural forces, wars, and celestial events interpreted through the lens of myth. Projecting modern technology onto ancient myth, they argue, distorts the cultural meaning embedded in these stories. To the Sumerians, the Anunnaki were not aliens or scientists. They were sacred embodiment of order and chaos, life and death, mystery and law. Yet the myths endure and continue to fascinate. Part of their power lies in the vivid imagery they evoke. Picture the towering ziggurats rising against a blazing Mesopotamian sky, stair-stepped mountains of mud, brick, and stone reaching towards the heavens. Imagine the priests climbing their spiraling paths, offerings in hand, while the ordinary people gazed upward in awe and fear. The gods lived above, not just symbolically, but physically in the structures built to honor them. The line between divine and human, between earth and sky, was thin. In this world, the Anunnaki walked among men, wielding powers that seemed impossible. For a farmer scratching a living from parched soil, the idea of beings who could control life's rhythms must have been both terrifying and comforting. The myths framed existence within a larger story, one that explained the floods, the famines, the victories, and defeats that defined daily life. Even today, these stories tap into something primal, the hope that we are not alone, the suspicion that our ancestors knew more than we credit them for, the hunger to find meaning in the blank spaces of our own history. Whether the Anunnaki were god symbols or something stranger is ultimately secondary to their lasting impact. They embody the human desire to connect with forces greater than ourselves, to imagine that our beginnings were shaped not by accident, but by intention, by design. The dry sands of Mesopotamia still conceal the ruins of the great cities where these myths were first sung, crumbling walls broken, statues ununiform, tablets cracked and weathered by time. They speak of a people who looked up at the stars and wondered just as we do. The Anunnaki myths endure because they touch something timeless, the longing to understand where we come from and whether, in the far reaches of past or future, someone or something might be watching still. Chapter 13. Ancient Roman surgical tools in the lamplight of a Roman medical clinic. Bronze tools gleamed their polished surfaces, catching the flicker of flame. The air was thick with a sharp scent of crushed herbs, vinegar, and blood. Laid carefully on wooden tables were scalpels, bone saws, forceps, catheters, hooks, and specular. An arsenal of precision crafted not for war, but for the battle within the human body. The surgical practices of ancient Rome were far more advanced than many imagine. Excavations at sites like Pompeii and Herculaneum have uncovered surgical kits perfectly preserved beneath layers of volcanic ash. These kits contain dozens of specialized instruments, many immediately recognizable to modern surgeons, scalpel blades of various sizes, crafted to slice with precision, bone saws, small but wickedly efficient forceps shaped for gripping arteries, or extracting foreign bodies, hollow tubes for draining fluids, probes for exploring wounds, hooks for manipulating flesh. The craftsmanship of these tools reveals a deep understanding of both form and function. Handles were ergonomically shaped for firm grips, blades were honed to fine edges, materials ranged from bronze to iron to silver, selected for their strength and resilience. Some tools were so refined in design that their modern equivalents have changed little in 2 millennia. Roman medi and dipti surgeons and healing specialists operated with these tools in environments ranging from bustling clinics to battlefield tents. They performed cataract surgeries, inserting fine needles into the eye to displace clouded lenses. They set broken bones with splints and bandages, excised tumors with steady hands, and even conducted primitive forms of trepanation, drilling into the skull to relieve pressure after head injuries. Controlling bleeding was a matter of life and death. Roman surgeons used cauterization, heating metal instruments until they glowed, then applying them directly to wounds to seal blood. Vessels crude by today's standards, it was often the only way to prevent fatal hemorrhage. To reduce infection risk, they washed wounds and instruments with wine or vinegar, substances that offered mild antiseptic properties long before a germ theory explained why they worked. The knowledge behind these practices did not emerge from superstition alone. Roman and Greek physicians like Galen and Celsius documented anatomical observations and surgical techniques with remarkable thoroughness. Stella Studina remains one of the most comprehensive surviving medical texts from antiquity, describing in clear terms how to lance abscesses, amputate limbs, and manage fractures. Galen serving as physician to gladiators and emperors. pushed anatomical understanding further. His dissections, largely conducted on animals due to taboos against human autopsy, produced detailed theories of the circulatory and nervous systems, though later generations would correct his errors. Galen's influence endured for over 1,000 years, a testament to his skill at observation and deduction. Roman medicine was a complex interplay of science, experience, and belief. While surgical practices could be impressively empirical, they often operated alongside treatments based on astrology, balancing humors, or invoking the favor of healing gods. Like Aesculapius, medicine was not yet separated from the spiritual and philosophical realms. Healing was as much about restoring balance to the soul as it was about repairing flesh. Yet the tools themselves tell a clear story. They reflect a systematic empirical approach to healing. Each tool was designed with a specific purpose in mind, crafted by artisans who understood that precision could mean the difference between life and death. The specialization of Roman surgical instruments challenges the notion that ancient medicine was purely primitive or random. Of course, there were profound limitations. Without anesthesia beyond alcohol or herbal sedatives, patients endured unimaginable pain. Without sterilization, infection was a constant threat. Without imaging or advanced diagnostics, surgeons relied on touch, sight, and experience to make life or death decisions. But within these constraints, Roman surgeons displayed extraordinary courage and ingenuity. On the battlefield, a wounded soldier might be carried into a makeshift tent, the heavy silence broken only by his ragged breathing. A medic would kneel beside him, unrolling a leather pouch to reveal sharp scalpels, delicate forceps clamps, ready to grip torn arteries. There would be no room for hesitation. The tools demanded knowledge, speed, and resolve. In the marble courtyards of Roman villas, physicians treated wealthy patrons. In the bustling streets of Rome, public clinics offered care to the poor. Across the empire, from Britain to Egypt, the same bronze instruments flashed in the hands of those who refused to surrender life without a fight. Roman surgical tools stand today as physical evidence of a tradition that honored knowledge, skill, and daring. They whisper across time of countless moments when healers faced the wounded, the sick, and the dying, armed with little more than their wits and a few finely crafted blades. They remind us that the path toward healing has never been easy or certain. It has always demanded bravery from both surgeon and patient. It has always required the willingness to step into the unknown, to cut into the body's deepest vulnerabilities in the hope of restoring life. The glint of polished bronze and lamplight, the steady hands reaching for a tool, the sharp sting of vinegar on an open wound. These are the enduring echoes of Roman medicine, a legacy of ingenuity and determination etched into the bones of history. Chapter 14. The Hellenistic Automatons. In the marble courtyards and grand temples of the Hellenistic world, machines stirred in secret. At the flicker of a torch, temple doors creaked open by themselves. Birds sculpted from bronze sang with voices carried on currents of air. Wine poured from fountains without human touch. Mechanical puppets danced through miniature dramas behind painted curtains in a world that had barely begun to understand the gears of nature. The Hellenistic engineers bent nature's forces to their will, creating automatons that blurred the line between the living and the made. It was an age of wonder and ambition, fueled by the meeting of Greek, Egyptian, and Middle Eastern traditions. Figures like Cadibius of Alexandria, Philon of Byzantium, and most famously Hero of Alexandria, built undocumented machines that transformed temples, theaters, and royal courts into stages of mechanical marvels. Hero's writings, especially Pneumatica and Automata, preserved the designs of many such devices. In his descriptions, one finds a world alive with ingenuity, siphons, and counterweights carefully concealed behind walls, gears, and pulleys turning in secret as crowds gasped in amazement. Altars that lit fires spontaneously when a priest made an offering, statues that moved their arms and poured libations, birds that trilled with the passage of air through cleverly hidden tubes. The mechanisms were ingenious, but rooted in physical principles understood well, even then water pressure in sealed vessels. Air trapped and forced through channels, the balancing of counter rates and siphoning of fluids created repeatable, reliable effects. Levers and gears translated vertical motion into horizontal gravity, and pneumatics acted as silent servants executing commands unseen by the public eye. One creation described by Hero was an automatic wine dispenser. When a cup was placed upon a platform, the weight triggered a mechanism that opened a valve, allowing wine to pour until the cup was filled to the correct level. Then the valve closed itself. Another marvel was a mechanical theater where puppets played out scenes, their movements choreographed by ropes, pulleys, and rotating drums beneath the stage, all powered by the slow unwinding of weights. Temples became showcases for these devices, designed not only to inspire awe but to manifest the divine. When a worshiper saw heavy bronze doors swing open without human touch, it seemed as though the gods themselves welcomed them inside. Flames that ignited without visible cause, statues that moved or sang, all reinforced the mystery and majesty of the divine order. The machines also served to demonstrate philosophical principles for scholars and engineers. Automatons were physical expressions of theories about pressure, volume, and mechanics. They illustrated the hidden structures of nature, showing how understanding forces, even those unseen, could lead to mastery over materials and environments. The sophistication of these machines is startling. Hero's mechanisms often included feedback loops, automation triggers, and timed sequences, concepts that resonate with modern programming. Although limited by their materials, bronze, leather, wood, and by the absence of true energy sources. Like steam engines, the basic architecture of mechanical control was already in place. The legacy of the Hellenistic automatons survived not through uninterrupted tradition, but through fragments. As the Western Roman Empire fell, much of this technical knowledge was lost to Europe. However, Islamic scholars preserved and expanded upon it. Engineers like Al-Jazari in the medieval Islamic world built upon Hero's principles, designing water clocks, mechanical servants, and elaborate fountains that echoed the spirit of Hellenistic invention. By the Renaissance, hints of the ancient automatons re-emerged. Leonardo da Vinci sketched mechanical knights and hydraulic systems, dreams built on half-remembered blueprints of the past. And today, in laboratories building autonomous robots and mechanical prosthetics, one can still sense the echo of those early experiments, machines created not just for utility, but for wonder. Mainstream historians view the Hellenistic automatons as the pinnacle of ancient engineering creativity. Achievements remarkable for their time, but constrained by their materials and energy limitations. They were not the beginnings of industrial revolution, but they were proofs of concept, demonstrations that nature's laws could be harnessed and directed, that the seemingly magical could be explained and more thrillingly replicated. Imagine standing in the cool darkness of a stone temple, torchlight glinting off polished marble. A priest gestures, and from deep within the building comes a soft metallic hiss, the whisper of water coursing through hidden tubes. Heavy doors swing wide with a creak, revealing the sanctuary beyond. The crowd gasps, not with fear, but with rapture, sensing they are witnessing something closer to the divine. The whir of gears, the precise pull of ropes, the breath of captured air escaping through narrow valves. These sounds stitch together a world where gods and humans met through the bridge of invention. The Hellenistic automatons were not built simply to function. They were built to inspire. In their metal seamless and whispered hydraulics, they carried the dreams of an age unafraid to imagine a world animated by knowledge, machines that hinted at futures even their creators could scarcely envision, yet dared to build anyway. Chapter 15, Ancient Acoustic Levitation. Hypotheses. In the barren heat of ancient deserts, on the misty heights of forgotten plateaus, humans built with stones that seemed to defy reason. Massive blocks, some weighing dozens or even hundreds of tons, fitted together with a precision that mocks modern. Machinery, how they moved these megaliths, has remained a central mystery. Among the many theories, one stands out for its strange, captivating boldness: that ancient civilizations harnessed the power of sound, itself acoustic levitation, to lift and transport their impossible cargo. Acoustic levitation is a real observable phenomenon. Modern laboratories have demonstrated that sound waves properly tuned and amplified can suspend small objects in midair, particles of dust, tiny droplets of water, even lightweight materials can be held aloft by the invisible pressure of intersecting sound fields. It works by creating areas of high and low pressure that counteract gravity, balancing the object perfectly in place. But scaling this effect up from microscopic particles to multi-ton stones remains purely theoretical. The energy required would be immense, far beyond what conventional drums, horns, or human voices could produce. Yet legends persist, hinting at lost techniques where sound alone shifted the immovable. Tibetan law offers one of the most cited examples. In the 1930s, a Swedish doctor named Yale claimed to have observed monks using a combination of drums, horns, and coordinated chanting to levitate stones up a cliffside to a monastery under construction. According to his account, large groups of monks arranged themselves in precise formations facing a stone, the sound built in rhythmic waves, drums pounding horns, blaring until slowly the stone lifted and floated through the air. Skeptics have dissected this story for decades. No physical evidence supports the claim, no recordings, no surviving eyewitnesses, yet the image remains, haunting the notion that resonance, not brute force, could coax stone into the sky. Elsewhere, ancient sites like Bet el-Bek in Lebanon or Pumapunku in Bolivia fuels similar speculations. At Bet el-Bek, the famous stone of the pregnant woman weighs over 1,000 tons. Modern cranes would struggle to move it. At Pumapunku, stone blocks are carved with such precision and found scattered as if tossed like toys that conventional explanations sometimes falter. Oral traditions at these sites speak of songs and sacred sounds aiding construction. The theoretical requirements for large-scale acoustic levitation are daunting. Moving a single multi-ton block would demand not just powerful sound waves, but precision control across a broad, stable platform. The sound would need to be focused, tuned to exact frequencies that interact with the mass and shape of the object. Without advanced materials to contain or amplify the energy, the logistics stretch credibility. Modern science remains deeply skeptical. In laboratories, levitating even small spheres requires careful calibration and significant energy focused through specialized transducers. Scaling up by orders of magnitude would encounter enormous barriers, including the simple resistance of air, the dispersal of energy, and the challenge of maintaining stable levitation over large distances. And yet the acoustic levitation hypothesis endures, not because it is proven, but because it speaks to our enduring awe at ancient achievements. When we stand before the Great Pyramid, or the walls of Sacsayhuaman, or the terraces of Machu Picchu, the sheer scale and precision provoke a hunger for answers that match the grandeur of the stones themselves. Human beings have always filled gaps in knowledge with the language of possibility. Sound is a fitting candidate, invisible yet powerful. A force that moves not with the brute force of muscle, but with rhythm, vibration, and resonance. Concepts that feel both mystical and deeply natural. The real achievements of ancient builders remain astonishing, even without invoking lost technologies, levers, sledges, ramps, and thousands of skilled hands. Could and did move mountains, knowledge of materials, coordination of labor, and a profound patience with time and effort shaped these wonders without need for sonic miracles. Imagine, though, the sensory world these builders inhabited, the rhythmic pounding of drums echoing off stone valleys, the low bone shaking hum of giant horns reverberating through canyons, the rising chant of hundreds of voices merging into a wall of sound. Even without Levitating stone, such sonic environments would have infused construction sites with an almost supernatural energy, making the impossible feel within reach. Whether literal or metaphorical, the idea of using sound to command the forces of nature touches something deep within us. It suggests a vision of humanity not simply battling the earth into submission, but harmonizing with it, finding hidden resonances that could lighten even the heaviest burdens. The hypothesis of ancient acoustic levitation remains unproven. No ancient text describes such a method. No ancient tool or remnant confirms it. Yet the stones remain, the songs remain, the mystery remains, and perhaps that is enough. Mystery fuels imagination. Imagination drives inquiry, and in that endless pursuit, humanity finds its truest resonance.